In this lesson, we're going to learn about the roles of different South Carolinians during the American Revolution. Now, there would be two groups of people that would emerge during the American Revolution. There were those that wanted independence from Britain, and they were known as the Patriots. Then there would be another group or faction of people who would not want independence from Britain. They were known as the Loyalists. They were also known by a derogatory name called Tories. Today we're going to learn more about these two groups, the Loyalists and the Tories. Now, the first group we're going to learn about are the Patriots. The Patriots wanted independence from Britain. Here are the attire of the Patriots, which we'll see better pictures here shortly. They also were the ones that controlled the Continental Congress. The Patriots in South Carolina, which we'll go ahead and quickly create, they were from this area surrounding Charlestown, where all the wealthy plantations are, the majority of slaves and others. What area is that called? Yes, they were from the Low Country. The Patriots had the political control of the colonies during the Revolution. They controlled the provisional governments that had been set up to control the colonies in the absence of the royal governor and the other leaders from England. An example of that would be what was South Carolina's provisional government. Here is a hint, GC, and then there's a number. Yes, the example would be South Carolina's General Committee of how many people? Yes, of 99. Now, the Patriots, as far as their position in society, they were the wealthy landowners. So those who were opposed to the taxes and the actions of Britain, it was more the wealthy people from South Carolina society. They also joined these groups that we're going to learn about that were, they were sneak attack groups. They joined partisan groups that we are going to learn about. And they also controlled the groups of soldiers, which, you know, it's like ordinary people, and they kind of form an army, the Continental Militias. Now, the Patriots had various propaganda and political cartoons to motivate the colonialists to fight Britain. Now, one of these, which is known as the Gadsden flag, because it's from a man named Christopher Gadsden, who I believe was from South Carolina. You see this today because it's become a rather famous symbol, and it was of a snake that said, "Don't tread on me." And the message to the British with this flag was, a snake's pretty harmless if you leave it alone. but if you step on it, it's going to bite you. And the message was that the British had pretty much stepped on the colonialists, who, like a snake laying, would have been harmless if they hadn't stepped on them. But since they've stepped on them by passing of taxes, the intolerable acts, and things such as that, they have awakened a snake and getting bit on the leg. Now, the next political cartoon, which was also a snake, was designed to establish unity in the colonies. And the colonies were more separate entities than they were, than they thought of themselves as a new nation. And this political cartoon, which was a snake that was chopped up, was meant to rally the colonies into unity. And the caption on this, which would include the abbreviations of all the different colonies, I'm not going to fit them all here, but this caption was "Join or Die." Both of these were political cartoons or rallying propaganda for the Patriots. And the purpose of Join or Die cartoon was to get the colonies to join together. Because if they do not join in this common quest to fight the British, then the revolution is ultimately going to be unsuccessful, and things are going to be worse for the colonists than they were before. Here is the Gadsden flag that you probably see, because it's become somewhat of a symbol against the government, against tyrannical government, or if government gets involved. Don't tread on me. And today it's kind of like a check for government. You know, our government's formed by the people, but if people in the government start to abuse the people's rights, then they better be wary of what could happen, because do not tread on the people. So, once again, this is was a patriot symbol, but you may see it today. Here are the Patriots, which we just learned about. They were the colonists who supported the Continental Congress and independence. The Patriot cause would benefit because they supported the Continental Congress. And any laws that were passed by the provisional governments would benefit the Patriots during the American Revolution. In South Carolina, the Patriots were the wealthy landowners that were in the low country of South Carolina. They, of course, supported independence and created the provisional governments to control the colony during the war. South Carolina Patriots, they controlled the colonial militias and also the partisan groups, which we're going to learn about later in this lesson. Now, it's important to understand that not all wanted independence in the colonies. And the desire for independence was dependent upon your social position in society and your view of the British government, as well as the effect that the government and their taxes had on people. Now, the Loyalists were those that supported the king, and they either thought the king was doing excellent or that really he's doing okay, not worth separating from the colonies. Now, the Loyalists in South Carolina were in the area behind Charleston to the west called the Back Country. And they were also in the Up Country. But as I've tried to make clear to you, the Back Country and the Up Country were pretty much synonymous, even though the Back Country would be more like this line, and the Up Country's up in here. The way that society in South Carolina was pretty much the Low Country were the wealthy planters, and they thought everybody else was uncivilized in the rest of the country, in both the Back Country and the Up Country. So it was pretty much the Low Country versus everybody else. Now, as was said, the Back Country, they supported the king, and the Patriots, they would not call them Loyalists, they would call them Tories, which was a derogative term. I'm trying to draw a crown here. There we go. Good enough. Put some diamonds in it. So they supported the king. Now, some, though, they weren't really true loyalists. And the reason that is because a true loyalist would have this strong moral foundation that they should remain loyal to the king. But many, though, they were farmers and woodsmen, like we've already talked about, where they're really not affected by the taxes that the Low Country have to pay that the British passed, because they're kind of living in a self-sustained lifestyle. Farmers don't have to pay any taxes on many of the products they buy because they go out in the woods and they find them and create them. They don't use paper that much, so they were unaffected by the tax on paper that was from the Stamp Act and also the townshend duties. And the other manufactured goods that were taxed were not really an issue either. Also, when the Intolerable Acts were passed, the farmers and the woodsmen, they have no interest in the closing of Boston Harbor. They could care less. They also probably did not have to experience the quartering of troops because they were so far out in the country. So many of these loyalists in the Back Country, they weren't true loyalists. They just never saw a point in going to war with Britain, which would result in, most likely, many of their deaths. So they chose to be loyalists, although not really true loyalists. They just wanted to live without interference. Also keep in mind, there were many immigrant groups in the Back Country, Germans and Irish. What are they? They're like pretty much, what do we care about independence? We're just back here trying to make a living. Oh, I see I already wrote that. Now, after the war, many of the loyalists in South Carolina left for the Caribbean and Canada. Where might they probably go in the Caribbean, which is more like the mother of settlement for Charleston? Yes, they probably went to like Barbados and other British colonies. So, we learned about the Patriots. Let's look at some facts about the Loyalists. Now, the Loyalists, also called the Tories, which was a derogative name, they were loyal to the king in Great Britain. Now, some had a strong moral belief that they should remain loyal to the king, and they volunteered to fight on the side of the British because they felt the Patriots were just totally wrong. And South Carolina ended up having more loyalists than any other colony except New York. This would contribute to a large number of battles fought in South Carolina. South Carolina actually had 137 battles fought here during the Revolution. The Loyalists were in the upstate, the back country of the Carolinas. So the Loyalists would be in this area, the back country, the up country of South Carolina. And as I've tried to make very clear, some were not true Loyalists, but just wanted to be left alone to live their lives without interference. And you can also attribute the large number of Loyalists to the fact that many of the backcountry people were German immigrants who had no allegiance to the king or principles of democracy and felt that there was no reason to go to war and risk dying over those issues that the Patriots thought were so important. Now, South Carolina would see this tremendous number of revolutionary battles fought in the state because of the many loyalists that were here. And what most of the battles that were fought in our state, which were fought between backcountry or upcountry loyalists, also known as the Tories, and low country patriots, most of these battles were fought between South Carolinians. So it wasn't British soldiers that were fighting each other. It was low country patriots versus backcountry loyalists, both that were born and lived in South Carolina. Now, when groups within a country or within a area fight each other, it's known as a special type of war, and the one in South Carolina was known as it was a civil war. So a civil war in South Carolina happened because of the amount of loyalists and patriots, and most of the fighting in South Carolina was between South Carolina backcountry loyalists and South Carolina low country patriots. This fight between the patriots and loyalists, this would hurt the patriot cause. Now, the next part of the lesson is about what was already mentioned, the partisan groups. Now, the partisan groups were South Carolinians, patriots, who they believed in the cause of the revolution for independence, but they did not believe in the traditional tactics of the British Army, or of the Continental Army, which was the main army that was headed up by George Washington. This was the official army of the new United States, and this was headed up by George Washington. Well, the partisans, and we're going to learn about several famous ones from South Carolina. You may have heard of a few. One guy's name begins with an F, Yes, Francis Marion, and another is named Thomas Sumter. But they were the leaders, but they were groups of people that they basically did this. Instead of going out in rows and firing at each other like traditional warfare, they would use sneak attacks, which would minimize their casualties and would enable them to surprise British forces and maximize their damage with using just a small amount of people. So here I'm drawing some partisans hiding in the woods as the British come by. They had these big hats, some of them, and they're marching by, and the partisans, they would sneak attack these British. The British would be thrown into a state of hysteria, and the partisans would attack, and they become very feared by many of the British because of their sneak attacks, having nicknames like the Ghost, and the Ghost is fake, this is from the Patriot, but they named them like creatures that would attack, like the Swamp Fox, that's Francis Marion's name, and one of the guys was named the Wizard Owl, because, I mean, you ever see an owl, they may make the hoo, but they attack birds in the air like pretty viciously. So these partisans, they use this sneak attack. They hid in the woods and attacked the British. This is a type of warfare known as something that starts with a G. Yes, you probably heard of it before. I think you did when you learned about the Vietnam War, guerrilla warfare. Here is some more information showing the guerrilla warfare of the partisans, the hit-and-run attacks. This is a bad picture. I never picked this. This is the Civil War. But you could picture a sneak attack going on right there. And also, to reemphasize that there was a civil war in South Carolina between South Carolina Low Country Patriots and South Carolina Loyalists in the upper back country. This Civil War, which of course was part of the overall Revolutionary War, this would hurt the Patriot cause. Now, once the war was over, many Loyalists left the state for Canada, and those who stayed were fined or run out of town. This completes the lesson for today. Just remember that not all in the Carolina or in the colonies that declared independence wanted independence. There were two groups, the Patriots and the Loyalists. And even though some Loyalists supported the king, many just wanted to live their life without interference. Until the next lesson, thank you for listening. I hope you did well.